All right, so welcome everybody to another Open Game Data Open Office Hours. So just an introduction. So the Open Game Data community is an NSF-funded research incubator, bringing together a collective of researchers interested in the use of data generated in and around games to advance our scientific understanding of thinking, learning, and decision-making. And we have two primary goals in this group. One is to sort of collect a set of best practices and resources that advance the practice of how we use data to do this kind of stuff, and that's what these sorts of sessions are around. And then long-term, our goal is to build a actual concrete research infrastructure that instantiates a lot of these best practices into things that people can reuse and leverage.